Speaking of all this marketing and branding and shit, I watched a very interesting documentary on Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he was like basically...
Make the Bernays sauce?
I think so. Maybe. How do you spell it?
I don't know.
It might be because he did advertising for like foods and shit. Okay, so I watched this video when I woke up around breakfast time, and YouTube knows me, so like you probably want to watch a documentary about breakfast instead of
At
making
11 a.m.
Yeah, at 11 a.m.
Breakfast time.
instead of making yourself breakfast. So I was like, yeah, I'll watch a documentary about bacon and eggs, dude. That's cool. And it was like, why is bacon and eggs the traditional American breakfast? So I was like, you got me, YouTube. I'm popping it on. And they start going on this thing where they're like, the reason, and he starts off, he's like, the traditional American breakfast is a staple of America. It's been going on for like hundreds of years. And he was like, except it's not. And I was like, oh, I love those ones. Like the Vsauce twist where they're like, where he's like, the earth isn't flat. Or is it? Ding. And then it like goes into this whole thing, you know. I'm like, okay, now you got me, bro.
Cold open.
Yeah, cold open. So he hits me with the American breakfast hasn't always been bacon and eggs. What happened? Well, this fucking advertiser, Edward Bernays, comes in, nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he had this fascination with understanding what makes people do things, what makes people buy things. He was like the first really kind of like founding father of modern advertising, I would say. And he figured out that like, so what he figured out, there was like these 4 steps. And I think the first one was like, it's going to sound stupid if I explain it now, but basically bacon and eggs was done because like this bacon company was like, having shorter sales, and like people were eating less hearty breakfast because like back in the farm days they would be eating like all these hearty breakfasts doing manual labor. Then once people started moving to the cities, like they didn't need as much of that like hearty breakfast and shit, so it kind of just became like a cup of coffee and a piece of toast, kind of like how they do in Greece and stuff, because Greece don't fucking work. But like so he was like, the companies were like, dude, we need a way for people to keep buying our fucking shit. So then Bernays comes up with this scheme where he's like, all right, we're going to fucking appeal to people's like lowest baseline desires. So he makes like a patriotic thing. He's like, you know, like we're not going to, like, Americans are hard workers and blah, 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 blah. And we need a breakfast that can like fuel us for, and we're not going to be like the fucking French and drinking fucking marmalade in the morning, all that bullshit, and like sipping vermouth like the British. We're Americans. We eat hearty breakfast to do hearty things, blah, blah, blah. And so they start pushing this campaign that like taps into people's psyches where they're like, yeah, I'm fucking American, babe. I'm eating bacon and eggs, dog. Fuck this cereal, dude. If I was eating fucking cornflakes and shit, not jerking off, fuck that shit. I want fucking bacon and eggs. They're from fucking US of A.
Use that bacon grease. I'm going to go beat off. I'm going to pray to the flag.
So he does this whole thing, they're like, and it works. And all of a sudden, people start fucking selling all kinds of bacon and eggs. And then he's like, all right, let's do that shit with orange juice too, because nobody really wants orange juice. So he's like, ooh, let's make this campaign and be like, orange juice is like super healthy, and like basically lie to people and tell them. And then they're like, yo, Lucky Strikes comes, and they're like, dude, this one got me. Lucky Strikes comes in, and they're like, dude, women aren't smoking cigs. This is a problem, dude. There's a taboo in society where women feel like it's unfeminine to smoke cigs. And that's like half of our market, you know, men and women. And so they're like, we need you, Bernays. We need you. So he's like, all right. Lucky Strikes comes in. He's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start first. We're going to tell people that thin is in. So thin fashion is starting to come back in, right? And then we're going to tell people that like sugar's really bad for you, which is kind of true. Bernays is kind of right about eating a bunch of sugar. So he does this campaign to women where it's like this beautiful woman smoking a cigarette. And then he's like, the motto is going to be reach for a lucky instead of a sweet. Basically saying, grab a cig instead of that dessert.
Yeah.
You know, because
Suppress
being thin is in.
with a cig.
Exactly. And so people are like, all right. And women are like, ooh, being skinny's nice, and like I could smoke a cig instead of eating. That's good. And so people start doing that. And then the company comes back, they're like, all right, dude, we're getting some better sales. Women are starting to buy cigs, but we got another problem, dude. They're only doing it inside. They still won't smoke like out in public because it's still looked as like taboo and like masculine. So he's like, all right, dude, I'm Edward Bernays, bro. I got you on this. So then he's like, all right, what we're going to do is link up with this suffragette movement, which is in the 20s when women were trying to vote and stuff. He's like, we're going to make cigarettes a sign, a symbol of feminism. And so he goes, they had this big New York parade, and he puts in all the newspapers, watch as young suffragettes march during the parade and light torches of freedom. And so he gets, that's what they called them, torches of freedom.
God.
And so he gets all these young women, these like feminist women, to go out and smoke cigs during this parade as a symbol of like, fuck the patriarchy, we're women, we can do what we want. And then all of a sudden, women start buying cigs and stuff like that because they're like, yeah, fuck man, dude, I'm smoking outside now. And so now Lucky Strike's like, hell yeah, dude, we got women smoking, this is awesome. And he did it by like making it a political movement. He made their thing. And that stuck with me because I was like, wow, that's how like so much of like all of marketing kind of works that way, where it's like when he said
It's
that
kind
like
of funny now because now instead of like trying to push agendas, they're like coattailing agendas.
they're
They
coattailing
almost get
agendas.
in too late too, to the point where whenever like companies do shit like that, it always has like a level of like ugh to it.
Yeah.
It's like you guys are late.
Yeah. And there's also the aspect, which I think is the most interesting, is that these companies are just pushing whatever agenda they can and co-opting any movement they can to try to market more of their product. So I think it's so fascinating how all these billion-dollar companies have taken on this like woke, like anti-capitalist type of like, you know, pro all this shit stance. And then you zoom out and you're like, wait, they're doing that. It's the biggest stage of irony to me because all these humongously capitalist companies are preaching these like anti-capitalist ideals out of capitalism.
Yeah.
Like they're making more money. They're doing, that's the ultimate form of capitalism, is marketing to people, making them think that they're resisting capitalism or something, resisting some type of thing. You're part of the resistance by buying our fucking product.
Yeah, well, it's like the same thing when like all like those IPAs came out and shit, and it would be like Budweiser or whatever made like a craft beer, and they'd sell like it under a fake name or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like you guys are just co-opting a trend, like.
Well, yeah, and also look at how Budweiser and certain beers have taken on this like, you want American beer, or like trucks that are like, you drive a Dodge because you're fucking American. We don't drive Japanese shit. And it's like that they were saying like before the 20s and before that turn of the century shit, because this guy was like a propagandist during World War I. That was kind of where, and there was a whole bunch of they studied all these things during wartime because they were using propaganda to try to figure out how to like manipulate public morale and shit like that for war times. And then they got out of the wars and they were like, wait a second, we have all this like knowledge about the human psyche and group psychology, and we can use this during peacetime for marketing and advertising. Before then, you'd go to a place and they would just tell you like,
Guys, we can use a war tactic on our own people.
bingo, bingo. And so you have like, before then it was all like facts based. Like somebody would have a car and they'd be like, yo, like this car gets X to the gallon. It does this, it does that, it does this. And people would be like, all right, dude, cool, whatever. And then they were like, no, dude, you got to take it deeper, bro. You got to make it like a symbol. Like you got to make your car like a symbol of like manliness in America. Like your Bud, like you fucking drink a Budweiser outside. There's a bunch of girls in a pool or something, and like everybody's having a fun time.
Ford Tough pickup truck.
Bingo. And so you see how these companies have been like kind of playing our psychology to try to sell more of their shit, which then like divides people. So you have all these companies that are like pushing all these agendas, not because they believe in these agendas, but because these are the agendas that are going to make money. And then the public is so swayed by them because it's literally propaganda type shit.
Yeah.
And then we're all in the midst because everywhere we turn on the TV, we're always being influxed with all this messaging and political stuff. And it's like, it's all like kind of like, it's like a mind fuck in a way a little bit, because like we talked about before on this podcast, like I don't believe Nike actually cares. I don't. I believe people at Nike might care, but I don't think Nike as a corporation truly gives a shit. Like I said, when they have fucking sweatshops in Indonesia, I don't think they actually care about human rights. You know, I don't think a lot of these companies do. I don't think, you know, it's just one of the best examples of that. And I found this interesting was like, looking at, they did this like collage thing of like during Pride Month, all these companies like BMW and Amazon and all these companies in the Americas had like rainbow logos and stuff. And then if you went to like their logos for like the Middle East Twitter, it was just regular. And it was like, okay, so you don't like, if you really believe that shit, like if you really believed in like LGBT rights, like you would fucking push that shit over there too, you know, because that's something that's important. No, it's just marketable here, and over there it would be not marketable. So you don't do it. And so it's like, so you're kind of bullshitting, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And then so I just found it interesting to see how like the psychology of like propaganda and wartime kind of swept into human psyche in terms of like using that for marketing, which all goes back to the conversation we've been having this entire podcast so far about status symbols and buying products for reasons outside of how it benefits you, you know, for reasons outside of things that it's just like, it's just playing to like your ego or something like that. And
that's how like Apple became popular. There's like had all those commercials about like, I'm a like PC, I'm a Mac. It's like, damn, I want to be a cool Mac guy.
yeah, that PC guy sucks, dude. Sucks, dude.